Right after I pressed the record button, I checked if I have the mask on my face. It's because I felt as if I'm talking to the camera and the camera is a person, and I have gotten so used to wearing mask in front of people. Oh my god, what's happening to us? So today we're going to talk about the Z5 and the Xt3 and how they compete with each other. The reason for this comparison is simply because they're very different cameras, but they come very close to each other in terms of pricing, especially within a few months when the Z5 will start seeing some discount from the retailers. You will see that they come very close to each other in terms of pricing, and a lot of people will start thinking, which one should I go for, right? So the video has that purpose. Now see, no camera can be reduced down to the list of specs, right? No camera can be, because there's a lot of emotional aspects associated with cameras. But I cannot talk about those things because I'm not you, and only you will be able to understand what you feel for a certain brand or a certain design or look or a certain product. Those ideas, those myths are entirely personal. But what I can talk about is how they compete with each other in terms of specs, and I have written down what I think is the most important parameters to look into while deciding between these two. So the first parameter, always the most important for me, is the build quality. Then we will talk about the EVF, the card slots, low light focus, file quality, dynamic range, ISO performance, shooting speed. The look, they have different looks. We'll talk about that. The depth of field, IBIS, which again relates back to low light performance. Um, Shutter speed, the highest shutter speed, battery performance, colors and image quality. So these are the photo aspect of the specs. There are also some video aspects. We'll talk about them later. Let's first go through all of these one by one. Now if we talk about the build quality, Xt3 is a flagship product. Usually the Nikons are made better than the Fujis, and if you follow the channel called Danny and Andrew talks about how the Fujis are not as well made as some of its competitors. Nikons are very well made, but the thing to remember here is that the Xt3 is a flagship product from Fuji. So when you make a flagship product, the best product in your portfolio, obviously you take that much more care into making the product better, into get into every detail of the product, and you're not cutting cost. You're trying to put in as much as you have in that product, right? You're holding nothing back. If you look at the Z5, it's not a flagship product. In fact, it's meant to be an entry level full frame camera. So by design, it's there. Nikon would have looked into cutting cost while making the product. Although Nikon has committed as a high level of make and build quality, as you see in the Z6 and the Z7, you already know that the top plates and the bottom plates are not made of magnesium alloy. Unlike the Xt3, it's completely magnesium alloy, or like the Z6 and Z7. So I think here the Xt3 has a slight advantage. Also the fact that Xt3 has seen 2 years of life, and people have used the camera, and they have found it to be a very well made and sturdy product. They've taken in the snows, rainfall, in mountains, in humid conditions, in Southeast Asia and other countries. So Xt3 has seen the test of time, and 2 years is a decent time for the world to talk about and testify for its build quality. Xt3 is likely to be slightly better in terms of build quality. Probably not a lot, but definitely it will have an edge. Now the EVF, it's again very subjective. The EVF on the Z5 is likely to be slightly better, the Xt3 EVF is very good, very high grade, very competitive. The refresh rate is very high. The refresh rate on the Xt3 is actually better, but the Z5 actually borrows the same EVF from the Z6, and I personally find the output and the experience of looking through the Z6 viewfinder better, and you're going to get the same experience looking through the Z5. So Z5 is likely to be slightly better from in terms of the EVF experience. Card slots. Card slots is a tie. Both of them have dual card slots, and the first time that any camera on the Z system is using a dual card slot, so it's a tie there. Low light focus, not low light performance, but low light focus. Xt3 performs better than the Z6 in low light focus, as in it's able to grab focus on a subject or an object better in low light than the Z6. Since Z5 is going to use the same system as the Z6, you can expect the Xt3 to perform better than the Z5, especially in catching focus in low light. I'm sure the speed on the Z5 must be better than the Z6 in terms of in normal lighting conditions. But if you look at the autofocus system overall, the Xt3 has an edge. Now that leads us directly to the conversation on low light performance, file quality, ISO performance, and all of that. Overall, because it's a full frame camera and Nikon files are usually much better than any other of its competitors, you will see much better output from the Nikon. The files are extremely have very good dynamic range, especially the shadow recovery is very good in the Nikon files. It's not only about the Z system. You look at the DSLRs, D700, D750, D800s, and D850. They have, all of them have very good low light performance and shadow recovery. However, the Xt3, when it is compared to the 750 and the 850, the tests showed that the Xt3 performs better in keeping details in the highlight. But if you look at how people shoot, how you're likely to shoot, you're likely to underexpose and shoot to protect the highlights and then recover the shadow details while correcting the files. So if you look at how people shoot, that difference, that advantage of Xt3 perhaps doesn't matter so much. But just because you're able to protect a bit of highlight, if you're shooting bright scenes, Xt3 is going to be better. Overall, holistically, Z5 is going to give you better ISO performance. It's going to give you better files in terms of dynamic range. You're going to be able to recover much more from the Z5 files than from the Xt3 files. The other very important and related thing here is that if you are a Lightroom user, the Xt3 files will show you, it'll not give you the best colors and other things out of the Xt3 files. So I think overall Z5 files have an advantage. It is going to be better in low light. It's going to have, when it has caught focus and you have actually taken a picture which is in focus, you'll see the output is better on the Z5 compared to the Xt3. The ISO performance, because it's a full frame camera, is going to be definitely better. Continuous shooting speed. Z5 is no comparison. It doesn't stand a chance against in front of the Xt3. Xt3 is way ahead. It's got 11 frames continuous shooting speed in mechanical shutter, and in electronic shutter you're going to get 30 frames per second. Now the Z5 is going to give you only 4.5, so there is no comparison, right? The Xt3 is way ahead. If you need fast shooting speed, just go for the Xt3. Now the look, we spoke about the look, the full frame look versus the crop sensor look. What is a full frame look? It basically allows you to come closer to a subject because it gives you a wider angular view. What it therefore does is, because you're able to come closer to the subject, you get better background bokeh. Now most people, when they compare background bokeh, they talk about the long lenses and they compare between an 85mm 1.8 versus an 56mm 1.2 from the Fuji system, which is equivalent to 1.485 of a full frame system. The difference between a 1.4 and a 1.8 on full frame is very, very minor, right? You're not going to be able to see the difference at all. The background blur difference, the amount of blur you get in the background on a long lens, is not the real difference. The real difference is when you shoot wide. Imagine shooting with a 20mm 1.8 lens on the Nikon versus a 16mm, which is equivalent to 24mm. 16mm 1.4 on the Fuji, you will see much better background blur with the 20mm. You also have 24mm 1.4 lenses on the Nikon system in the F mount. You have 24mm 1.8 in the Z mount. You have 28mm 1.4 on the F mount. So if you look at these wide angle lenses where you have shallow depth of field, that look is phenomenal. That's a unique look, because usually when you shoot wide, you're not going to get that depth of field, and when you're able to get that, you're going to get a very distinct look, and that's how you'll see the medium format cameras stand out. Because as you move from crop sensor to full frame to medium format to large format, you're getting a much bigger sensor, therefore a much wider field of view, so you're able to come much closer to the subject using the same focal length. What it does, because you're able to come close to the subject, you will see much better background blur. So you'll see when you shoot medium format, if you just check on YouTube, you'll see a lot of reviews on of the GFX series or the Hasselblad cameras. You'll see that, you know, how they're able to come close and how they're able to take a wide angle shot, and still you have this beautiful soft background blur, which is which is difficult to come by even on a full frame. But you know, full frame you still have with full frame you still have a hope, because you can use that 20mm 1.8 or 24mm 1.4. So yeah, that wide angle look with nice depth of field, that defines a full frame look, right? And you're not gonna get that on the Fuji. You're likely to get that much easier on the Nikon. So yeah, that's one thing to keep in mind. Now the IBIS, yes, now that's another very important distinction. And the Z5 has IBIS, Xt3 just doesn't have. What does it translate into? It means that you're able to get these kind of shots. You see the blur, that ability to sort of keep the shot in focus and yet have motion blur, to capture the movement better, to capture activity in your shots. I think that's a privilege. So IBIS, a lot of people only talk about the fact that you're going to get stabilized video, or you're going to be able to shoot better at low light because you can keep the shutter open for a longer time. You know, creatively, the output that you get because you're being able to keep the shutter open for a longer time is that you bring in those beautiful motion blurs in the pictures, and that creative ability to me is a great plus if you're looking at the cameras for still shooting. So Z5 has the IBIS, Xt3 simply doesn't have. The other benefit is that the already larger sensor, which has already better low light performance, gets a 5-stop boost because the 5-stop IBIS on the Z5. So that's it. That's a big difference. If you're going to shoot at low light, you should definitely consider the Z5. Now, of course, you can get the stabilized lenses from the Fuji system, but well, you know, if you change your lens and suddenly if you want a focal length where you don't have a stabilized lens, or let's say you're using a prime or you don't have a stabilized prime in the Fuji system, you're not going to get stabilization. Then you'll think of getting the Xt4, which is much more expensive than the Xt3 or the Z5. Battery performance. You remember how I said that the Z5 is no comparison, no competition against the Xt3 in terms of high shutter speed, high continuous shutter speed? Is the same case here for in favor of the Z5. The Z5 has simply a much bigger and much better battery. It will last you longer. Each battery will last you longer. What it means is that for the same amount of shooting, you will need to buy more batteries for the Xt3. That's more investment. You will also need to buy the chargers, right? And you have to remember to carry the batteries and the charger along with you whenever you're going out. Now, if you're going on a trip, for example, now that's a bit of a hassle for me, according to me. So Z5 has a big advantage when it comes to battery. Also, if you're shooting video, you just want the battery to stay there for you, working for you for a longer time, and not worry about the fact that the battery is going to run out of juice and maybe it has stopped recording. And you know, these cameras don't have tally lights. You can't see whether they're really recording or not. That's a problem. So yeah, the bigger battery helps. High shutter speed. The Xt3 is a flagship camera, so it gives you 1/8000 of a second shutter speed. The Z5 is an entry-level camera, full frame, but it still gives you that 1/8000 of a second shutter speed, which is, I think, is a fantastic decision by Nikon. So there, it's a tie there. Colors and image quality, it's subjective, obviously, but the Nikon is going to give you vibrant colors. And if you compare, if you just look at people's conversations, you'll see that the Z system produces very vibrant and beautiful colors compared to any other system. However, Fuji colors are correct. They have these beautiful picture profiles and you can use them depending on the condition. So the Fuji's also has its own strong points. Although it's a personal choice, I think if you're shooting models and if you're going for glamour shots, I would go for the Nikon. If you're doing street photography, shooting films, it's a Fuji. I like them both. It's very difficult, but I think if you're looking for vibrant colors, it's a Nikon. If you're looking for mute, beautiful, softer colors, it's the Fuji. Now, those were the things to consider when it comes to photography. If you look at video, Xt3 overall is a clear winner. For example, to begin with, the 4K on Xt3 is fantastic. It gives you all the professional bells and whistles and many file format that you can record in. The dynamic range of the files are better. You can going to get the Eterna profile, which is fantastic. You just shoot with Eterna and you don't have to edit much on the Xt3. You also get F-log. You get a log profile with the Fuji. You don't get that with the Z6, with the Z5. However, when it comes to video, the autofocus is simply much better on the Z5. If you're a one-man army, if you're shooting yourself like this, you have no one to help you by being behind the camera and ensuring the focus is right. It's the Z5 because you can trust the camera to focus you and track you properly when you're shooting. When you're alone. The Xt3, even the Xt4 doesn't focus that well. Philip Bloom has a study, and you can just check Philip Bloom's video up on YouTube, his review of Xt4 autofocus while shooting video. It can be frustrating. A couple of lenses work well, and those are the most expensive Fuji lenses work well in autofocus. So I think overall, if you look at autofocus, if you want the camera to do it for you, then it does not perform that well. But if you're behind the camera taking control of the camera's autofocus, then you are not going to have that problem. So if you're a filmmaker and filming other people, Xt3 is the way to go. But if you are shooting, if you're going to shoot yourself, if you're a vlogger, then it is definitely the Z5, and you don't need those extremely high-end codec and file formats as well. Now, a lot of people will only compare the bodies. What is important to look at are the lenses. If you look at the Fuji lenses, they are great lenses, but you realize that there are some lenses that are great for photography and low light performance, and there are some lenses that are great for silent focusing and accurate focusing and for shooting video. So for different jobs, you'll end up buying different lenses, and that's not a great thing to do, right? And even when you have those, let's say, those are called Fuji F2 lenses. They're supposed to be better in silent focusing and better focusing overall in general. Even those lenses actually struggle most of the time while autofocusing or tracking your eyes. So I think if you look at the lenses, the Fuji lenses are not hybrid lenses mostly. They're great for photography, not so much for the for video. But if you look at the Fuji bodies, they're so far ahead of the rest of the market mostly in terms of video. So it's a bit of a conundrum, right? You have great video and hybrid body in the Fuji system, but you don't have great lenses there yet. On the other hand, you really have fantastic lenses in the Z system. The Z lenses don't focus speed. They have absolutely beautiful accurate focusing, and they do focusing silently. So these three abilities, although they don't have these manual lens system built in the lenses, but otherwise the Z system lenses are really good and high end. So if you're looking to invest in a system where you have lenses that are equally good for both shooting videos and photos, and then you should invest in the Z system and buy up those lenses, and later on you can easily upgrade the bodies to a better body. You can get a more professional body, or whenever Nikon launches a better body, you can just upgrade. Also, again, the build quality of the lenses, although the Fuji lenses are metal built, but most of them do not have weather seal, but all Z body, Z mount lenses are weather sealed. So that's a big advantage for the Z system again. So in conclusion, and I'll read the conclusion for you because I want to read it verbatim. Xt3 is a better all-around body overall, a better hybrid camera, better action and sports camera because of those 11 frames per second shooting ability. Cons: the lenses don't match the hybrid body, no IBIS, and you don't get that full frame look, right? Now, if you look at the Z5, it's the best entry point to any full frame mirrorless system right now. They have the files have better dynamic range, you have better colors, you have IBIS in that body, you have high quality hybrid lenses to invest in right now. And if you're going to buy lenses and build a sort of a portfolio of lenses, there you have a better set of lenses in the Z system. Cons: the body cannot match the Xt3 when it comes to video and slower in continuous shooting, so you won't be able to do very well in shooting sports or action, right? Sports or so you won't do very well while shooting sports or action on the Z5. My recommendation is, if you are someone who's looking for that full frame look, someone who's looking for IBIS, and someone who's looking for the better low light capability, and primarily looking to shoot photos, go for the Z5. You might also be someone who wants the camera to be able to shoot videos occasionally for you, and you want the camera to work on its own and not bother you so much about handling the camera to autofocus. The Z5 body is the right body for you. Xt3 is for intermediate to pro video shooters, and if you're a pro video shooter, you don't need suggestions from me. But if you're an intermediate shooter, or let's say even a video shooter, beginner video shooter, and you know that within a year or so your going to progress curve is pretty steep, and you know that you're going to reach the intermediate level within a year or so, you should invest in the Fuji system. And you're shooting other people, you're not vlogging, you're not depending on the autofocus system so much to get yourself in focus. Xt3 is the right body for you. The other reason to go for the Xt3 is because it's a small and tiny camera with a small and tiny lenses, so it's great for street shooting. If you're someone who wants to slip into a situation without being noticed so much, well, you will be noticed, but you will not be, let's say, you will not look or feel that intrusive with a smaller body and a smaller system. Therefore, if you want to shoot street, Fuji Xt3 is a better choice and a bigger full frame system. The lenses on the Z bodies are going to be long, they're going to protrude out of the body, kind of like a so it's more stealthy. The Xt3 is more stealthy, better for street photography. Now the final thought: the Fuji Xt3 is a much superior body, but it's a system that does not have lenses to fully utilize the strengths of its body. On the other hand, Z5 offers you a cheap entry point to the full frame Z system, and you have lenses that are quite ready for hybrid capabilities, hybrid responsibilities. With the Z system, you will start investing in a more ready lineup of very high quality lenses. So that's the final thought, guys. And guys, please subscribe. I must have said a lot of things that you don't agree with, so please comment if you dislike what I've said. If you have a different point of view, if you agree, please write them down in the comments. That really helps this channel. That helps spread the word. Also, please subscribe. Please press the bell icon, because we're going to come up with more interesting stuff very soon. Yeah, so that's about it. See you soon. It was great meeting you. Thank you. See you soon.